Steve Evans, great start to the season on Saturday. How's your week been in the build up to this Saturday?
No, it's been good. We've just been talking about it, haven't we? We come back in on Monday, and it's straight back to work and preparing for a team that's had a very exciting programme in the summer of recruitment. Back with a terrific owner, and they bring a lot of travelling support. So a lot of respect for David and his players. I know a number of them personally, and I know how good they can be. Although they had a adverse result on Saturday, I'm sure a bad 45 minutes doesn't reflect what they're going to have in the season ahead.
Obviously, it's still very early doors, but how much of a statement does last weekend's win put down?
Well, I think when you take it in isolation, it was a very difficult opening day trip away at Tranmere. 8 or 9 hours travelling on the Friday, um, playing a Mickey Mellon side that are always going to be competitive. But I think arguably we turned up with a real message that we're here to compete and be involved in games this season. And I think the players delivered that, didn't they? For probably 80% of the game, and the 20% of the game you have to give credit to Mickey's boys for forcing themselves back into it. But we can be. I said there's a lot of pluses in that performance, but there's a lot more to be coming from those players, and a lot more work on the training ground will help deliver that.
One of the main things we noticed from the game was the work ethic of the team. Everyone defended for each other, everyone was working for each other, and we had a real identity of the way we play.
I think many managers that we played at the end of last season that spoke to us in the summer, and obviously after we'd stayed up and kept this club in the Football League, a lot of them were saying the difference of playing Stevenage in those last 8 or 9 games to the previous 40 odd games was incredible. And it was down to work, nothing to do with sheer ability. It was down to work rate and organisation. So when we all come together, mainly as a group, and we're adding to it, we're trying to add to it, is the first thing we speak to the players about is how hard they had to work. Because when you go and look at the best players, I can remember doing my pro license with Pep. I'm name dropping here, but when I was out in Barcelona, and he said, he showed me some statistics of who's the hardest working team in the Liga. It was no surprise it was Barcelona. Who was the hardest working team in England 2 years ago? Liverpool. Who was the hardest working team last season? Manchester City. It's not made up statistics. It's just meters covered, intensity, the whole thing. So the minimum we can do is work as hard as Barcelona. Although we might never ever play like them, we can turn around and work as hard as them.
And you named Carpigiani's club captain. What was the thought process behind that?
Well, Carl's a man, and he's a leader. Um, he's not a howler on the pitch and big vocally. He is around the building Monday to Friday, and that's important. I see him having one-on-ones with players and just chatting and putting things across. And I think his performance on Saturday probably last Saturday demonstrated why we picked him. But there's a number of captains in that building. We're still deciding now as we speak on a vice captain. There's probably 10 people, 10 players that we could pick. So it's a big decision. It came down to 3 or 4, and we're happy with the choice of Cal.
And just a word on Elliot List. We all saw he suffered quite a nasty injury on Saturday. What's the latest with him?
Yeah, the scan's not good. He'll have an operation. We're just looking at it now. We don't know in terms of time scales yet, because until we sit down with the actual surgeon and go through it. But it was a nasty one. But listen, it is what it is. We hope it's sooner rather than later. But until we meet the surgeon and we got a full picture, then we're a little bit misguided at the minute.
And on to this Saturday, our first of the new season at Lamex. How much are you and the lads looking forward to walking out in front of a full crowd again?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think you look forward to every game, particularly when you come back in front of your home supporters, because they're the bread and butter of the football club. It's a town that matters above everything else, and the team plays a large part in that, in the community and what we're trying to achieve. So we're looking forward to being at home, but we know how tough it's going to be. Stockport will bring a good size support. They'll be smarting and hotting after last week. They've got a manager who's had an incredible couple of years, up and coming young manager that I think so highly of, and an owner who expects them to be in League One next year. So that's the size of our task. We're looking forward to it. The pitch will be amazing. The support will be great, and we have to turn up like we did last Saturday.
And just finally, there feels like there's a real buzz around the club at the moment, albeit there always is at the start of the season. But what would make a successful season for you at Stevenage?
Not successful.
A successful season.
We have to win promotion, don't you, to be successful. So we have the same aims and ambitions as everyone else. We may have less monies to do it than everyone else, but does it really come into it? Will the difference be money, whether it's Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, whoever win the Premier League? Will it come into who gets promoted to the Championship? Is it going to be West Brom, Derby dropping into League One? Is it going to be... No, it's not. It's about individual players coming together, being a unit and being a team, and we've seen some good players. Our chairman gave us some wonderful support. A number of those players in the building to make sure they come here and not somewhere else. We've not got the biggest group. That's why we need to add to it. But I had a long conversation with the chairman yesterday, and I think the chairman accused me of stealing his little quote about a stocking filler when he said he don't want any stocking fillers. And he reminded me of a conversation we had a few months ago when he said, I don't want stocking fillers. I said, I think I stole that quote, Chairman, because it's a good one. But so we're trying to add to the group, but we need to do it in the right way. And we need to have players that's going to make a difference to us. We're clear in the positions we want. We're in talks now with 2 or 3. I'm talking to them. Leon's talking to them. The chairman, of course, is above us all, and we feed it back through him, and we take ultimate guidance. But we're pretty close to a couple now. Pretty close.
That's great.
Thank you.
You mentioned that Stockport will be smarting from their defeat against Borough last week. What exactly do you expect them to be like?
Well, listen, I think they were, by a stretch, they were the best team in the National League last year. I think if they'd been in League Two, I think they were that good enough that then they would have got promoted out of League Two and into League One. I've watched a number of their games in pre-season in the last few days. I watched the first half last week to the second half. The first half last week, if you're Dave Challen, you don't recognise the people in the shots, the players in the shots. I think second half he made 2 changes. He changed the shape of the team. He changed what they're all about, and wow, he got a reaction. Should have got a point out of that, if not win the game in the second half. So you've seen the difference of, black and white, Celtic Rangers, massive differences, So from that point of view, it's they'll come here, they'll be organised, they'll be efficient, but we have to then stand up to a team that I've got absolutely no doubt will be in the top 6 or 7 at the end of the season.
What's the differences between this challenge against Stockport and last week against Tranmere? Because they're both going to be up there at the end of the year.
I think they're chalk and cheese in terms of how they built the squads. I think if you look at what Mickey's done up at Tranmere, under Mark Palios and his family, what they've built there's a young team. So they've primarily gone with a strategy of they've got 3 or 4 older players, and they've brought young players in and around the football club, or kept the younger players and given them longer and probably more lucrative contracts to build something that becomes a model that they can still do very well and sell a player. Stockport have gone down a completely different route. They've bought in and they've spent a lot of money and they've paid big wages to tried and tested players that have played a lot higher. So completely different models. I think as an experienced manager, you would always be more wary of playing against that tried and tested lads who have all come from Championship and League One, rather than young players. Although I'd sound like an idiot if I was the guy who said that when Manchester United brought through Beckham, Scholes, Giggs, the Nevilles, all those when I think it was Alan Hansen said, wasn't it? You were nothing with kids. So I think you would rather play against them like we did last week. And I think Saturday will be a true test for us. True test.
You're going to have to make one change, but is there a temptation to maybe stick with a winning side?
So I think there's always a temptation when you play as well as we did to say that's how we'll play. I think as a manager, when I've been successful, I've always been able to look at my group and plan 1 or 2 matches ahead, maybe even 3 at a luxury side when you say this will suit this will suit them in terms of how they play. There may be a couple of changes on Saturday, but there'll be as thought out and as analysed as we possibly can, and then we'll be not completely different in terms of wholesale changes, but we'll be a different model when we go to Reading on Tuesday.
Thank you, Gavin.